Some wounds do not bleed, but they live in the heart, and they never heal, until truth walks through your door. Years had passed in Grand Lagos, yet the storm from that terrible night still lived in Henry's mansion. But when a silent boy appeared by the old bridge, carrying the eyes of a forgotten child, destiny began to speak louder than the pain. Years had passed since that terrible night when baby David disappeared. Grand Lagos, the city of shining lights, had grown even busier. New skyscrapers touched the clouds. The streets were filled with noise, cars, and the never-ending footsteps of people chasing their dreams. But inside Henry's mansion, time had frozen. The house that once expected the joyful sound of a baby's laugh now sat in silence. Henry no longer smiled like before. His hair had turned gray too soon, and his once proud shoulders now drooped as if carrying the weight of the whole city. Magdalene, once full of light, had become a quiet shadow of herself. She no longer painted her lips or wore bright dresses. Her eyes, once shining like the morning sun, now looked like the rainy sky. She spent her days sitting by the nursery window, staring at the empty crib, hoping that one day, somehow, her child would return. Every night she whispered the same prayer. God, if my son is still alive, send him back to me. Please. But no answer came. Henry tried to stay strong for her. He continued building houses and offices in the city, but his heart was not in his work anymore. His family, once proud of his success, now only saw sorrow in his eyes. As for Mabel, she continued to live in the mansion, wearing expensive clothes and jewelry. She still smiled at visitors, but her eyes were always restless. She had no child of her own, and even though she pretended to enjoy her life, deep inside, fear grew in her heart like a dark vine. Every time she looked at Magdalene, she wondered, what if the truth one day comes out? What if someone finds out what I did? Mabel pushed the thoughts away, but they kept returning like echoes in an empty room. Far away, on the other side of Grand Lagos, in a small, dusty part of the city, lived a man named Baba Tund. Baba Tund was not rich. He worked as a local mechanic, fixing old cars and motorbikes at the corner of a busy street. People trusted him because he was kind and never cheated his customers. But Baba Tund had a special treasure in his small wooden house. The boy was about 6 years old now, quiet but strong. He did not speak, but his eyes said more than 1,000 words. Whenever Baba Tund looked into the boy's eyes, he felt something deep in his heart, like a father's love that had been waiting all his life. The boy never spoke a single word, not even when he learned to walk, not even when Baba Tund tried to teach him to say, Papa. But the boy was smart. He helped Baba Tund at the workshop, passing tools and cleaning parts. Customers often noticed his silence and asked questions. Is he your son? They would ask. Baba Tund would smile softly and say, God gave him to me. He had named the boy Emmanuel, meaning God is with us, but the city children at the playground had given him another name, the silent boy by the bridge. This was because every evening after helping Baba Tund, the boy would walk to the old bridge near the busy market. He would stand there, looking at the rushing waters below, his eyes distant as if searching for something lost. People in the area grew curious. Why does he always stand at the bridge? They wondered. But no one had the answer. Not even Baba Tund. What they did not know was that, deep inside, Emmanuel's heart carried memories too old for his young age. He could not explain them, but he felt them, like pictures in his mind. A big house with gold flowers on the wall. A woman with gentle eyes singing softly. A man with a deep laugh, holding him in strong arms. And water. Rushing cold water. One day, as Baba Tund worked on a customer's car, Emmanuel stood nearby, holding a wrench. An expensive black Jeep drove past them and stopped at the corner. The windows were tinted, but when they rolled down, Henry stepped out. Henry had come to inspect a new land he was buying in that part of the city. As he stood discussing with the landowner, his eyes accidentally fell on Emmanuel. For a brief moment, Henry's heart skipped a beat. There was something familiar about the boy. Something in his eyes. something in the shape of his face. His chest tightened and he could not look away. "Who is that boy?" Henry asked the landowner. "Oh, him," the man replied. "That's the silent boy who lives with Baba Tund, the mechanic." Henry nodded slowly, but his mind could not shake the strange feeling. As Henry left, Emmanuel continued to stare at the black jeep, a flicker of recognition passing through his eyes. Back at the mansion, Henry could not stop thinking about the boy. At dinner, Magdalene noticed his quiet mood. "My love, are you troubled?" she asked softly. Henry hesitated, then shared what he had seen. "I saw a boy today," he said. "There is something about him that reminds me of our David." Magdalene's heart skipped. Her fingers tightened around her spoon. "A boy?" she asked quickly. "Where?" Henry described the location and Baba Tund's name. Magdalene's eyes filled with tears, and hope, long buried, began to rise again in her chest. "Can we go and see him?" she asked, her voice trembling. Henry nodded. They decided to visit Baba Tund's workshop the next day. The following morning, under the clear blue sky, Henry and Magdalene arrived at the small mechanic workshop. Baba Tund, covered in oil and sweat, greeted them with a warm smile. "Good day, sir and madam. How can I help you?" he asked. Henry smiled kindly. "We are looking for the boy who stays with you." Baba Tund called Emmanuel out from the house. When the boy appeared, Magdalene gasped. Tears filled her eyes. There was no doubt. The boy looked like Henry, and more importantly, like Magdalene's father from old family photos. "My God!" Magdalene whispered, her heart racing. Henry knelt in front of Emmanuel, his eyes full of emotion. "Hello, young man," he said softly. Emmanuel looked at him quietly, then at Magdalene. For a moment their eyes locked, and Magdalene felt something deep inside her, something that could not be explained. She reached out her hand, tears streaming down her cheeks. "David," she said, her voice breaking. The boy did not answer, but slowly, carefully, he stepped forward and placed his small hand in hers. Magdalene broke into sobs, holding him close. Henry, too, wiped his eyes, his heart filled with both hope and fear. Baba Tund, watching the scene, felt a heavy weight in his chest. "Sir, madam," he said softly, "I found this boy in the canal years ago. I thought he was gone, but when I saw he was still alive, I took him in as my own." Henry and Magdalene listened with wide eyes as Baba Tund explained how he had discovered Emmanuel trapped between the rocks and the water. Magdalene's heart shattered and healed at the same time. She held Emmanuel tighter, not wanting to let go. "This is our son," she whispered to Henry. "This is David." But there was one more thing to do. To be sure, Henry requested a DNA test at the hospital. Days later the results came back. Positive. There was no mistake. Emmanuel was David. The boy they thought they had lost forever had returned home. The news spread across Grand Lagos like wildfire. "Henry and Magdalene's missing child has been found," the headlines shouted. People celebrated in the streets, neighbors brought gifts, and the whole city rejoiced at the miracle. But not everyone was happy. In the mansion, Mabel's heart trembled with fear. No, it cannot be," she thought desperately. "If he is truly back, my secret will be exposed." Her hands shook as she read the newspaper. Sweat rolled down her face, and her breath came in quick gasps. Fear had finally found her. As the mansion prepared for David's welcome party, Magdalene could not stop looking at her son. He still did not speak, but his eyes were full of life. He followed her everywhere, holding her hand tightly, as if he too feared being taken away again. Henry spent hours playing with David, showing him family photos and telling him stories. Slowly, the house began to fill with laughter once more. The dark cloud that had covered their lives started to lift. But beneath the happiness, a quiet storm was still brewing. Henry and Magdalene did not forget the questions that still needed answers. How did David end up in the canal? Who had taken him from his crib that stormy night? Magdalene, holding David close, made a silent promise. "I will find the truth," she whispered. "No matter what it takes." And in the dark corner of the mansion, Mabel, now restless and afraid, felt the walls of her lies beginning to close in. Her past was about to catch up with her, and there was nowhere left to run. The sky over Grand Lagos was dark and heavy again, just like the night David disappeared. But this time something felt different. Mabel felt like the walls were closing in on her every day. The fear in her heart had grown so big that she barely slept. Her hands trembled whenever she saw David, and she avoided Magdalene's eyes, afraid of what they might see. It is only a matter of time, she thought, her heart pounding in her chest. The day of David's welcome celebration arrived. Henry had spared no cost. The mansion was decorated with bright colors, music played in the background, and important people from across the city filled the house. But as the party continued, rain began to fall, soft at first, then stronger, as if the heavens were preparing to reveal hidden things. While the guests danced and laughed, Magdalene noticed Mabel standing alone by the window, her face pale. Henry saw it too. He leaned closer to Magdalene and whispered, "Her eyes hold fear." Magdalene nodded. "I have seen it also," she replied softly. "Tonight we will know the truth." And they did not have to wait long. As the rain poured harder, Henry's mother, Mama Grace, arrived at the mansion. She was an elder with a sharp eye and a sharp tongue. She loved Magdalene dearly and had long suspected that something dark surrounded the night her grandson vanished. Mama Grace pulled Magdalene aside and whispered, "My daughter, the answer to our pain is close. I feel it in my bones." Magdalene's eyes filled with tears. "Mama, I pray you are right." Mama Grace turned toward Mabel, narrowing her eyes. Then, in front of the guests, she raised her voice. "We cannot celebrate this child's return without knowing the truth," Mama Grace declared. The room fell silent. The music stopped. All eyes turned to her. Henry stood, his voice strong but filled with pain. "I agree. Tonight, in the name of justice and for the peace of our family, we must find out who took our child." Mabel's hands shook so badly that she dropped her wine glass. It shattered on the marble floor, drawing attention to her. "Is something troubling you, Mabel?" Mama Grace asked sharply. Mabel forced a weak smile. "No, Mama," she replied, but her voice quivered. Henry stepped forward. "If you know something, Mabel, speak now." The guests watched, their eyes wide with curiosity and fear. Mabel felt her heart hammering in her chest. Sweat rolled down her face. Her knees became weak. Just then, David walked into the room, his innocent eyes looking around at the adults. His presence broke Mabel's defenses. She fell to her knees with a loud cry. "Please forgive me," she wailed. Gasps filled the room. Magdalene's heart pounded as she stepped closer. "What are you saying, Mabel?" she asked, her voice trembling. Tears ran down Mabel's cheeks as she confessed in front of everyone. "It was me," she cried. "I took your child that night. I threw him into the canal because I was jealous. I wanted him gone so I could be the queen of this house." The room exploded with shock. Some guests covered their mouths. Others began to cry. Mama Grace shook her head in deep sorrow. Henry's face turned pale with anger and heartbreak. Magdalene collapsed into a chair, her chest rising and falling as she struggled to breathe. Mabel continued, sobbing. "I thought the river would carry him away forever. I thought he was gone. I never knew he survived." Her words hung in the air like poison. Silence filled the mansion. Even the rain outside seemed to stop and listen. Henry's eyes burned with fury. "You betrayed this family," he said in a low, dangerous voice. Magdalene could barely speak, her heart shattered. She held David close, tears falling from her eyes like the rain outside. "You tried to kill my child," she whispered. "I was blinded by envy." Mabel screamed, "Please forgive me." But no one in the room felt mercy. Henry turned to the guards. "Take her away," he commanded. The guards grabbed Mabel, and she did not resist. She wept bitterly as they led her out of the house. As she passed by David, she fell to her knees again, but the boy turned his face away, holding tightly to his mother. That night, after the guests left and the house grew quiet again, Henry and Magdalene sat with David in the living room. The rain had finally stopped, and the air felt cleaner, fresher, as if the storm had washed away all the evil. Henry looked at his son and spoke softly. "David, my son, we lost so much time. But we will build new memories together." Magdalene held David close. "Our pain is behind us. Our future is bright." David, still silent, looked up at his parents with wide eyes. Then something miraculous happened. For the first time in his life he spoke. "Papa, Mama," he whispered. Magdalene gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Henry's eyes filled with tears. "You spoke," Magdalene cried, holding him tighter. "Papa, Mama," David repeated, his voice small but clear. It was as if the weight of silence had finally been lifted from his heart. Henry and Magdalene cried tears of pure joy, hugging their son tightly. Mama Grace, watching from the corner, wiped her own tears and smiled. "This is God's justice," she said softly. "Truth always wins." Days later, the police finished their investigation. Mabel was sentenced for her terrible crime. The court ruled that she would spend many years in prison, paying for her wickedness. Her wealth and position could not save her from the hand of justice. As news spread across Grand Lagos, people spoke of the family's pain and their miraculous reunion. Henry and Magdalene's faith never failed, they said. They waited, and God restored their joy. Business partners, friends, and even strangers came to congratulate Henry and Magdalene. Their mansion, once a place of sorrow, now became a home full of laughter, love, and life. David grew stronger each day. Though he had lost his early years to silence, he quickly learned to speak, read, and write. He and his father walked through the gardens together, talking about buildings and dreams. He and his mother baked cakes and read stories under the big tree in the yard. Mama Grace often sat by the window, watching them with a proud heart. "Pain lasts for a moment," she would say, "but joy comes in the morning." As for Baba Tund, the humble mechanic who saved David, he was honored by Henry and Magdalene. "You saved our son when we could not," Henry said, giving him a new home and a better workshop. "You are part of our family now," Magdalene added with a warm smile. Baba Tund, his eyes full of tears, thanked them deeply. "It was God who led me to him," he replied. Many years later, people in Grand Lagos still told the story of Henry, Magdalene, and their lost son who found his way home. Parents told their children, "Do not let jealousy live in your heart. It is a fire that burns everything." And they would always finish with these words. "No matter how dark the night, the sun will rise. No matter how heavy the storm, the sky will clear. And no matter how long the pain, joy will find its way home."